Sophia never imagined that her life would change so drastically overnight. Just a day ago, she had been a simple, quiet girl living in a tiny apartment, working tirelessly at a local bookstore to support herself. She had no family, no luxuries, and certainly no expectations of marrying a billionaire. But fate, or something far darker, had other plans. It all started with a mysterious letter. A sleek black envelope slipped under her door with nothing but her name in elegant gold lettering. She hesitated before picking it up, her heart pounding with unexplainable anxiety. Inside, the letter was even stranger. "You are invited to an event that will change your life. Come to the Grand Royal Hotel at 8 p.m. A car will be waiting." There was no sender's name, no details, nothing. Just an invitation that felt as dangerous as it was intriguing. Sophia had no intention of going until she lost her job that very afternoon. The bookstore she had worked at for 3 years was shutting down. Just like that, her only source of income was gone. She had rent due in 2 days and no savings. Maybe this was fate's way of offering her an escape. Dressing in her best, which wasn't much, she arrived at the Grand Royal Hotel. A chauffeur in a black suit opened the door for her without a word, guiding her inside. The hotel was breathtaking, gold chandeliers, velvet carpets, and an eerie silence that spoke of wealth and power. But it was the man waiting for her in the private lounge that truly stole her breath. Alexander Sinclair, the billionaire, ruthless in business, feared by many, desired by more. He was the kind of man she had only seen on TV, powerful, arrogant, and dangerously handsome, and he was looking directly at her. "You came," he said smoothly, offering her a glass of wine. Sophia hesitated before taking it. "Why am I here?" He leaned back, his sharp blue eyes pinning her in place. "Because I need a wife and you're perfect." Her heart nearly stopped. "Excuse me, you heard me." His voice was calm, confident, as if he wasn't proposing the most absurd thing she'd ever heard. "You marry me, and in return you get wealth beyond your imagination. A life of comfort, security, and privilege. No catch." Sophia almost laughed. "That sounds like the biggest catch of all," he smirked. "You're not wrong." She should have walked away. She should have questioned why a billionaire would choose a random girl like her, but desperation whispered in her ear. Her rent, her job, her future, it all hung by a thread. And so, against every instinct screaming inside her, she said the words that sealed her fate. "I'll do it." The wedding happened the very next day. No family, no friends, no time to process what was happening. Her dress was chosen for her, vows were exchanged, and suddenly she was Sophia Sinclair, wife of one of the most powerful men in the world. The media exploded with the news, calling her everything from a Cinderella to a gold digger. But none of that mattered, because the real shock came on her wedding night. As she stood in the grand bedroom of Alexander's mansion, staring at the luxurious bed covered in rose petals, the door creaked open. Alexander entered, his face unreadable, his movements slow and deliberate. "You should know something before we continue," he said, his voice low and serious. Sophia swallowed hard. "What is it?" He stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat of his body. His gaze darkened. "There's a reason I chose you." Her stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. He handed it to her without a word. With trembling hands, she opened it. The moment her eyes scanned the words, the blood drained from her face. It was her name. Her full name, and underneath it a chilling sentence written in bold letters. She must be the one. Only she can break the curse. Sophia's breath hitched. A curse? What did that mean? She looked up at her husband, but his expression gave nothing away. "What is this?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Alexander exhaled deeply, as if preparing himself. "It means," he said slowly, "that you were never chosen by accident." And just like that, her wedding night turned into a nightmare. Sophia's hands trembled as she gripped the note, her heart pounding against her ribcage. "A curse!" Her voice came out in a whisper, almost lost in the grand bedroom's heavy silence. What are you talking about? Alexander didn't answer immediately. He took the note from her and placed it on the bedside table before stepping closer, his sharp blue eyes dark with something unreadable. "You'll understand soon enough," he said, his voice calm but eerily distant. "For now you need to trust me." Sophia took a step back. "Trust you? I don't even know you. I just married you hours ago, and now you're talking about curses?" She shook her head, her mind struggling to process everything. "I need answers, Alexander, now." He ran a hand through his dark hair, exhaling as if this conversation exhausted him. "I was going to tell you after the wedding night," he admitted. "But you need to know before it's too late." "Too late for what?" Sophia demanded. Instead of answering, Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. It wasn't the one that had held her wedding ring. This one was older, the edges worn. "Open it," he said. With shaking fingers, Sophia took the box and lifted the lid. Inside was an antique ring, unlike anything she had ever seen before. The band was solid gold, but the stone, deep red, almost like blood, had strange symbols etched into it. She looked up at him, confused. "What is this?" Alexander's expression darkened. "That," he said, "is the reason I needed to marry you." The air in the room seemed to thicken. Sophia felt cold, despite the warmth of the grand chandelier's golden light. "You're not making any sense," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Alexander hesitated. Then, in a tone so low it sent chills down her spine, he said, "You were chosen because you are the only one who can break the Sinclair curse." Sophia's blood ran cold. Curse. The word echoed in her mind like a death sentence. She shook her head. "That's ridiculous. Curses aren't real." Alexander's gaze didn't waver. "This one is." Sophia backed away until she hit the edge of the massive bed. "This is insane," she muttered. I need to leave. This was a mistake." She turned toward the door. Before she could take another step, the bedroom lights flickered, and a gust of ice-cold wind rushed through the room. Sophia froze. A chill slithered down her spine. The windows were closed. The door hadn't opened. There was no way a breeze could have entered the room. And yet, the candles on the bedside flickered wildly, as though something unseen had passed through them. Sophia's breathing turned shallow. Her instincts screamed at her that something was very, very wrong. She slowly turned back to Alexander. His expression was grim. "Now do you believe me?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. This couldn't be real. She had to be imagining things. Maybe she was dreaming. But the freezing air wrapping around her arms, the way the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift and stretch, told her otherwise. This is a joke, right?" she said weakly, her throat dry. Alexander shook his head. "I wish it was." Sophia felt her knees weaken, so she sat down on the edge of the bed, clutching the antique ring in her hands. "Tell me everything," she demanded. Alexander hesitated. Then, as if making a decision, he walked over and sat beside her. "My family is cursed, Sophia," he began. "It started generations ago, when my great-great-grandfather betrayed someone. He shouldn't have. A powerful woman. Some say she was a witch. Others say she was something worse." Sophia shivered. Alexander continued, his voice tight. "She cursed the Sinclair bloodline. Every male heir would suffer until the curse was broken, and the only way to break it," he turned to look at her, his blue eyes stormy with emotion, "is to marry a virgin girl chosen by fate." Sophia's stomach dropped. She suddenly felt sick. "So that's why you married me," she whispered. "Because of some ancient curse?" Alexander didn't deny it. Sophia let out a hollow laugh, shaking her head. "I can't believe this," she muttered. "This is insane. I should never have said yes. I should have never come to that hotel." "I didn't choose you," Alexander said quietly. "Fate did." She shot him a glare. "That's the same thing men say when they need an excuse to manipulate women." Alexander's jaw tightened. "I know how it sounds, but whether you believe me or not, the curse is real, and now you're part of it." Sophia wrapped her arms around herself trying to stop the chills that wouldn't leave her. "Why me?" she finally asked. "How does fate choose someone?" Alexander hesitated. Then he reached into his suit pocket and pulled out another piece of paper, this one old, yellowed and torn at the edges. He handed it to her. Sophia unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was faded, but still readable. "When the clock strikes midnight, the girl of fate will arrive. She will wear no jewels, no silk, but her soul will shine. She alone can break the chains of the past." Sophia's heart pounded as she looked up. This was about me? Alexander nodded. "The moment I saw you at the hotel, I knew. The prophecy described you exactly." Sophia swallowed. Her head was spinning. "This is too much," she whispered. "You expect me to believe that I was chosen by some ancient prophecy to break a curse on your family?" Alexander stood, running a hand over his face. "I don't expect you to believe me, Sophia, but I do expect you to listen." She bit her lip, staring at the old prophecy. Then, before she could say another word, a deep, guttural whisper echoed through the room. "She cannot escape her fate." Sophia's body went rigid, her breath caught in her throat. The voice had come from the shadows, and she wasn't imagining it. Something else was in this room, watching her, waiting, and Sophia suddenly realized she was trapped. Sophia's blood turned to ice. The whisper had been real, not a trick of the wind, not her imagination. Someone had spoken from the shadows. She clutched the prophecy in her trembling fingers, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. Her gaze darted to Alexander, searching his face for some kind of explanation. But the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He heard it too. Sophia's throat tightened. Who said that?" Alexander's jaw clenched. "It's starting." "What's starting?" Her voice was barely a whisper. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her to her feet, his grip firm but not painful. "Come with me, now." "Wait." Before she could protest, the whisper came again, low and sinister, crawling through the room like a living thing. "She cannot escape. Her fate." The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into momentary darkness. Sophia screamed. Then, just as suddenly, the lights stabilized. But something had changed. The air felt heavier. The shadows in the corners of the room were darker now, almost moving. She turned back to Alexander, heart racing. "Tell me what's happening." His face was grim. "The curse. It knows you're here now." Sophia yanked her wrist free. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," Alexander said, his voice low and serious, "that from the moment you became my wife, you became part of this. And now it's awake." Sophia swallowed hard. "What is it?" Alexander hesitated. For the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. That terrified her more than anything. Before he could answer, the bedroom door slammed shut on its own. Sophia jumped, a gasp catching in her throat. "What the—" Then, from the farthest, darkest corner of the room, a shape began to emerge. At first it was just a shadow slithering across the floor like liquid darkness. But then, slowly, horribly, it started to rise, tall, unnaturally tall, a figure, featureless, twisted, wrong. Its presence sent a wave of sickness rolling through Sophia's stomach, and then it spoke, its voice a rasping, inhuman whisper that made her skin crawl. The blood debt must be paid. Sophia's scream tore through the room. Before she could think, before she could breathe, Alexander grabbed her and yanked her toward the bathroom door. "Move!" he shouted. She didn't need to be told twice. She ran, her legs barely cooperating, her heart slamming against her ribs. Just as they reached the door, the thing in the shadows lurched forward. A blast of freezing air hit Sophia like a wall, and for a horrifying second, it felt like invisible hands were grabbing at her, trying to pull her back. But then Alexander yanked her through the doorway, slamming the door behind them. Sophia stumbled backward, nearly collapsing against the bathroom counter. Her entire body was trembling, her lungs burning as she gasped for air. "What the hell was that?" she cried, her voice shaking. Alexander pressed his forehead against the door, breathing heavily. Then, without turning around, he said, It's the curse. Sophia shook her head, her mind struggling to keep up. That wasn't a curse, Alexander. That was a thing. She broke off, shuddering. What was that? Alexander finally turned to face her. A spirit, he admitted, a vengeful one, and it won't stop until the debt is paid. Sophia's stomach twisted. Debt? What debt? Alexander's eyes darkened. The blood debt. She gripped the edge of the counter, feeling faint. You keep saying that, but what does it mean? Alexander was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Every bride of the Sinclair family has died on her wedding night. Sophia's entire body went cold. She stared at him, unblinking, waiting for him to tell her it was a joke. A twisted, horrible joke. But he didn't. His expression was serious, haunted. Sophia's throat was so dry it hurt to speak. What? Alexander exhaled slowly. Every woman who has married a Sinclair man has died before sunrise. Sophia's pulse roared in her ears. No, this couldn't be real. You're lying, she whispered. Alexander's jaw tightened. I wish I was. Sophia felt dizzy, her thoughts racing. Then why the hell did you marry me? She demanded. Alexander's expression darkened. Because, he said, you're different. Sophia stared at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Different how? She asked, barely able to get the words out. Alexander hesitated. Then, finally, he said, Because you're the first bride who might survive. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The room spun. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she realized she might not make it out alive. Sophia felt like the world had tilted off its axis. Every bride of the Sinclair family has died on her wedding night. The words replayed in her mind, over and over, each time cutting deeper. Her stomach twisted violently. That's insane. Alexander didn't flinch. It's the truth. Sophia shook her head, backing away. The cold bathroom tiles felt like ice beneath her bare feet. No, this has to be some twisted prank, some sick joke. Her breath hitched. Because, if what you're saying is true, then I'm going to... She couldn't say the word. Die. Alexander stepped closer, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Not if we stop it. Sophia let out a hollow, humorless laugh. Stop it? Stop what? A murderous spirit? A centuries-old curse? She gestured wildly toward the locked door. That thing out there, it's real. And you're telling me it's been killing your family's wives for generations? Alexander's jaw tightened. Yes. Sophia's heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. Then why the hell would you marry me? Alexander exhaled sharply. Because you're different. There it was again, different. Sophia swallowed hard. What does that even mean? He hesitated. Tell me. She snapped. Alexander sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Because, he said finally, you're the only one who was chosen. Sophia blinked. Chosen? By who? Alexander met her gaze. By the curse itself. Silence. The air between them felt thick, suffocating. Sophia shook her head, her throat tightening. That doesn't make any sense. It does, Alexander said quietly. Every other woman I've tried to marry, something stopped it. Sophia frowned. What do you mean? Alexander's expression darkened. Every engagement I've had before this ended in tragedy. One fiancé went missing days before the wedding. Another was in a fatal car accident. One woman... He hesitated, his fingers clenching into fists. One woman jumped from a building the night before our wedding. Sophia's blood ran cold. No, this was insane. You're lying, she whispered. Alexander shook his head. I wish I was. Sophia's entire body trembled. Then, why was I chosen? Alexander hesitated again, and then, with a slow exhale, he said, Because you're the only one who came willingly. Sophia's breath hitched. The memory of the black envelope flashed in her mind, the invitation, the strange feeling in her chest when she read it, way it felt like she was meant to be there. No, this couldn't be real. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. So what now? Are you saying I'm supposed to just accept this? No, Alexander said, his voice firm. I'm saying we fight it. Sophia let out a shaky laugh. Fight it? And how the hell do we do that? Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and metallic, a key. This house has secrets, he said. There's a room, one that's been sealed off for over a century. It holds the answers we need. Sophia stared at the key in his palm. Then a cold shiver ran down her spine. Because behind Alexander, on the fogged-up bathroom mirror, words began to appear. Like invisible fingers tracing through the condensation, a message was forming. And when Sophia finally gathered the courage to read it, her blood turned to ice. Run, Sophia, before he kills you too. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Every bride of the Sinclair family has died on her wedding night. Sophia's entire body went cold. She stared at him, unblinking, waiting for him to tell her it was a joke, a twisted, horrible joke. But he didn't. His expression was serious, haunted. Sophia's throat was so dry it hurt to speak. What? Alexander exhaled slowly. Every woman who has married a Sinclair man has died before sunrise. Sophia's pulse roared in her ears. No. No. This couldn't be real. You're lying, she whispered. Alexander's jaw tightened. I wish I was. Sophia felt dizzy, her thoughts racing. Then why the hell did you marry me? She demanded. Alexander's expression darkened. Because, he said, you're different. Sophia stared at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Different how? She asked, barely able to get the words out. Alexander hesitated. Then, finally, he said, Because you're the first bride who might survive. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The room spun. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she realized she might not make it out alive. Sophia felt like the world had tilted off its axis. Every bride of the Sinclair family has died on her wedding night. The words replayed in her mind, over and over, each time cutting deeper. Her stomach twisted violently. That's insane. Alexander didn't flinch. It's the truth. Sophia shook her head, backing away. The cold bathroom tiles felt like ice beneath her bare feet. No, this has to be some twisted prank, some sick joke. Her breath hitched. Because, if what you're saying is true, then I'm going to... She couldn't say the word. Die. Alexander stepped closer, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Not if we stop it. Sophia let out a hollow, humorless laugh. Stop it? Stop what? A murderous spirit? A centuries-old curse? She gestured wildly toward the locked door. That thing out there, it's real. And you're telling me it's been killing your family's wives for generations? Alexander's jaw tightened. Yes. Sophia's heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. Then why the hell would you marry me? Alexander exhaled sharply. Because you're different. There it was again, different. Sophia swallowed hard. What does that even mean? He hesitated. Tell me. She snapped. Alexander sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. Because, he said finally, you're the only one who was chosen. Sophia blinked. Chosen? By who? Alexander met her gaze. By the curse itself. Silence. The air between them felt thick, suffocating. Sophia shook her head, her throat tightening. That doesn't make any sense. It does, Alexander said quietly. Every other woman I've tried to marry, something stopped it. Sophia frowned. What do you mean? Alexander's expression darkened. Every engagement I've had before this ended in tragedy. One fiancé went missing days before the wedding. Another was in a fatal car accident. One woman... He hesitated, his fingers clenching into fists. One woman jumped from a building the night before our wedding. Sophia's blood ran cold. No, this was insane. You're lying, she whispered. Alexander shook his head. I wish I was. Sophia's entire body trembled. Then, why was I chosen? Alexander hesitated again, and then, with a slow exhale, he said, "Because you're the only one who came willingly." Sophia's breath hitched. The memory of the black envelope flashed in her mind, the invitation, the strange feeling in her chest when she read it, the way it felt like she was meant to be there. No, this couldn't be real. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "So what now? Are you saying I'm supposed to just accept this?" "No," Alexander said, his voice firm. "I'm saying we fight it." Sophia let out a shaky laugh. "Fight it? And how the hell do we do that?" Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and metallic, a key. "This house has secrets," he said. "There's a room, one that's been sealed off for over a century. It holds the answers we need." Sophia stared at the key in his palm. Then a cold shiver ran down her spine. Because behind Alexander, on the fogged-up bathroom mirror, words began to appear. Like invisible fingers tracing through the condensation, a message was forming. And when Sophia finally gathered the courage to read it, her blood turned to ice. "Run, Sophia, before he kills you too." Her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes snapped to Alexander, who was watching her carefully. "Who wrote that?" she whispered. His face was unreadable. "I don't know." Sophia's entire body screamed at her to run, to get out, to escape, before it was too late. But deep in her gut she knew one thing. No matter where she ran, the curse would find her, and she wasn't sure if she'd survive the night. Sophia couldn't move. The words on the mirror burned into her mind like a warning from beyond the grave. "Run, Sophia, before he kills you too." Her pulse roared in her ears as she slowly looked at Alexander. He stood perfectly still, his blue eyes locked on hers, unreadable. "You don't know who wrote that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alexander exhaled through his nose, jaw tightening. "I told you. The spirits in this house are restless. They'll do anything to drive you away." Sophia didn't know what to believe anymore. A part of her wanted to trust him, wanted to believe he was on her side. But another part, a primal, screaming instinct deep in her gut, told her to run. Her fingers clenched at her sides. "How do I know I can trust you?" A flicker of something, hurt, frustration, passed over Alexander's face. "You don't," he admitted. "And I don't blame you." Sophia swallowed hard. A loud bang suddenly echoed from outside the bathroom door. She jumped, a sharp gasp escaping her lips. Alexander grabbed her wrist. "We have to go now." Sophia yanked her arm away. "Go where?" Alexander lifted the key to the sealed room. "The answers are in there." Another bang, louder this time. Sophia could barely breathe. She knew she had two choices: stay here and wait for whatever was on the other side of that door, or follow Alexander and risk walking straight into something worse. Either way, she was trapped. She bit her lip, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Fine," she whispered. "Take me there." Alexander nodded once, then moved quickly, unlocking the bathroom door. He peeked outside cautiously before motioning for her to follow. Sophia hesitated for only a second before stepping into the dimly lit hallway. The mansion felt different now, colder, more suffocating. The walls, once adorned with elegant paintings and gold-framed mirrors, seemed darker. The floor creaked beneath her bare feet as she followed Alexander through the corridor. "Where is this room?" she whispered. "Third floor," Alexander murmured, "past the east wing." Sophia barely knew what that meant. The mansion was enormous, a maze of endless hallways and towering doors. But Alexander moved with purpose, his strides long and confident. They reached a grand staircase, and just as they started up, something moved, a flicker of shadow at the bottom of the stairs. Sophia's breath hitched. She turned her head slightly, and her blood went cold. A woman stood there, or at least is what was left of one. Her face was half decayed, her skin a sickly grey, her eyes hollow and black. She wore a tattered wedding dress, its once white fabric stained with deep crimson. Sophia froze. The woman tilted her head, her rotting lips parting ever so slightly. Then she spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Alexander grabbed her wrist. "Don't look at her," he ordered. "Keep walking." But Sophia couldn't move because the ghost bride wasn't looking at Alexander. She was looking directly at her. And then, the ghost's lips curled into a sickening, twisted smile. Sophia's legs gave out. The world tilted and she felt herself falling right into darkness. Sophia hit the ground hard. The impact rattled through her bones, but the cold was worse. It wasn't just the cold of marble floors or night air. It was a deep, unnatural chill that sank into her skin, into her soul. She gasped, her vision spinning as she struggled to push herself up. "Sophia!" Alexander's voice sounded distant, muffled like he was calling to her from behind a thick wall. She turned her head, trying to find him, trying to find anything. But the grand hallway was gone, the stairs, the chandeliers, the towering portraits of long-dead Sinclairs. Gone. She wasn't in the mansion anymore. She was somewhere else. A suffocating fog surrounded her, swirling in eerie silence. The ground beneath her was damp and uneven, like the floor of an abandoned crypt. Then, a whisper, right next to her ear. "He's lying to you." Sophia whirled around, but there was nothing there. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, panic tightening around her throat. Then the fog began to part, and she saw them. A row of women stood before her. No, not women. Brides. Their gowns were torn, dirtied, stained with something dark. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow. Some had broken limbs twisted at unnatural angles. Others had deep gaping wounds across their throats, and they were all staring at her. Sophia's breath hitched. One of them took a step forward. The woman from the staircase. The ghost bride. Up close she was even worse. Her veil was tattered, her lips blackened, but it was her eyes that made Sophia want to scream, soulless, empty, as if something had carved out everything human inside her. The ghost bride opened, her mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, a thick black substance dripped from her lips, splattering onto her ruined dress. Sophia felt like she was going to be sick. Then the ghost raised her hand and pointed. Sophia followed the gesture, and her stomach dropped. A massive wooden door stood at the end of the fog, heavy, ancient, sealed with thick chains and a rusted lock. The sight of it made Sophia's blood turn to ice, because somehow, deep in her gut, she knew what was behind that door, and she knew it was meant for her. "Don't go with him!" the ghost bride suddenly rasped. Sophia's head snapped back to her. The other ghostly brides behind her began to whisper, "Don't trust him. He's not what he seems. You're the last one. Run before he takes you there." Sophia's entire body locked up. She shook her head, panic clawing up her throat. "What does that mean?" she choked out. Who? Do I run from?" The ghost bride took another step forward. Then she grabbed Sophia's wrist, cold, agonizingly cold. It felt like ice and fire at the same time, burning through her skin. And then, "Sophia." Alexander's voice loud. Too loud. Sophia gasped as the world tilted violently. She was falling again, and then she slammed back into her own body. She was on the mansion floor. Alexander was kneeling over her, shaking her shoulders. "Sophia, wake up!" She gasped, sitting, up so fast she nearly hit his chin. The fog, the brides, the ghost, gone. She was back in the hallway, back in reality. But the ice on her skin, the lingering pain on her wrist where the ghost had grabbed her, was still there. Alexander cupped her face. "What happened?" His voice was urgent. "You collapsed." Sophia tried to catch her breath. I saw them." She choked out. Alexander's face darkened. "Who?" She swallowed hard. "The others," she whispered. "The brides before me." A muscle in Alexander's jaw ticked. Sophia's stomach twisted. "You knew," she accused. "You knew they were still here." Alexander exhaled slowly. "They don't want you to break the curse, Sophia. They want you to join them." Her breath caught. "What?" He brushed her hair back, his touch gentle. But his voice was deadly serious. "If you listen to them," he said quietly, "you'll never make it to morning." Sophia shuddered, but deep inside, something about this felt wrong. She glanced down at her wrist, And her stomach dropped. A bruise was forming where the ghost bride had touched her, a handprint, her skin achingly cold. And at that moment, Sophia realized one thing with soul-crushing certainty. The ghosts weren't trying to kill her, they were trying to warn her, and the real danger might be the man she just married. Sophia's wrist throbbed where the ghost bride had touched her. The faint outline of fingertips, darkening into bruises, burned against her pale skin. She stared at it, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Alexander followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. "You're cold," he murmured. Sophia yanked her hand away before he could touch it. "What are you not telling me?" she whispered. Alexander's expression didn't change. "We need to keep moving." He stood and reached for her, but she recoiled, scrambling to her feet on her own. Something had shifted between them. She no longer felt like she was running from a nameless horror in the dark. Now she wasn't sure if the true horror was standing right in front of her. Alexander exhaled sharply. "Sophia, don't do this." "Now, do what?" she snapped. "Start asking questions, realizing that none of this makes sense?" Alexander stepped closer, his expression carefully controlled. "You don't understand what's happening." Sophia took a step back. "Then explain it to me." Silence. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. Sophia's heart slammed against her ribs. "They were warning me, weren't they?" she whispered. "The brides before me. They weren't trying to scare me away." She swallowed hard. "They were trying to tell me the truth." Alexander's face remained unreadable. "They're lost souls, Sophia," he said. "They'll do anything to keep you here." Sophia's fingers curled into fists. "Maybe I should stay. Maybe I should listen to them." Alexander moved fast. Before she could react, his hands were on her, arms not hurting her, but firm enough to stop her from pulling away. His blue eyes burned into hers, intense, desperate. "If you listen to them," he said lowly, "you will not survive the night." Sophia's breath caught. His voice was softer. Now, almost pained. "You are not them," he said, his grip loosening. "You were chosen because you can break this." Sophia's mind raced. Break what? Alexander hesitated, and that was all the answer she needed. Her stomach twisted. "You don't want me to break the curse, do you?" she whispered. His lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Not fear for her, fear of what she might uncover. Sophia's pulse pounded. She had to get to that sealed room. Before he could stop her, she yanked free and ran. "Sophia!" His voice rang out behind her, but she didn't stop. Her bare feet pounded against the cold marble floors as she sprinted through the dark mansion, dodging towering portraits and antique furniture. She didn't need him to show her the way. She felt it, the pull of something waiting for her, calling her, the truth. The door was at the end of the third-floor hallway, massive, wooden, sealed shut with thick, rusted chains. Sophia skidded to a stop, panting hard. Her fingers trembled as she reached into her dress pocket, pulling out the key Alexander had given her earlier. She shoved it into the lock. The chains rattled violently. The moment she turned the key, a blast of icy wind slammed into her. The door creaked open, and Sophia stepped inside. Darkness. Thick. Suffocating. Then, candles flickered to life. The room was massive, lined with towering bookshelves, filled with aged journals and documents. The walls were covered in portraits. Sophia took a slow, trembling step forward. Her stomach dropped. The portraits were of women, all of them in wedding gowns, all of them staring directly at her, and beneath each portrait, a plaque with a name. Sophia's hands shook violently as she scanned them. Clara Sinclair, died 1843. Margaret Sinclair, died 1861. Eloise Sinclair, died 1890. Catherine Sinclair, died 1922. Juliet Sinclair, died 1965. Sophia's heart stopped. She turned slowly to the final portrait. Her mouth went dry. It was a painting of her, not just any painting, a perfect replica of her in her wedding dress, and beneath it, her name, Sophia Sinclair, died 2024. A cold, sharp scream ripped from her throat. The walls shook violently. The candles snuffed out, and in the darkness a voice whispered, low, chilling, merciless. "He brought you here to die." Sophia's breath came in short, panicked gasps. Her own name, her own death date. The plaque beneath her portrait burned into her mind. Died 2024. No, this wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But the cold weight in her stomach told her otherwise. The mansion had already decided her fate. A deep, guttural whisper curled through the room. "He brought you here to die." Sophia's hands shook violently as she stepped back, her back pressing against the heavy wooden door. "No," she whispered. "This isn't happening." But it was. A candle flickered back to life across the room, casting a dim glow on something huge. A black marble altar standing in the center. Sophia's stomach twisted. Dried blood stained the stone. Sacrificial. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body wouldn't move. Then, the door behind her slammed shut. Sophia spun, her fingers clawing at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. She was trapped. A soft click echoed in the room. Footsteps. Behind her. Her entire body stiffened. Slowly, dread crawling up her spine, she turned. Alexander stood there. Tall, unmoving. His face was cast in shadows, his expression unreadable. But his hands were stained red. Sophia's stomach dropped. She took a step back. What is this?" Alexander exhaled slowly. "You weren't supposed to see this yet." Sophia's breath hitched. "So it's true." Silence. Then, softly. "Yes." Sophia's pulse roared in her ears. "You were going to kill me." Alexander tilted his head slightly, his blue eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. "It's not that simple." "Like hell it isn't." Sophia's voice broke. "This whole time, you made me believe I could break the curse." She shook her head, hot tears burning in her eyes. "But you never wanted to break it, did you?" Alexander's jaw tightened. Sophia let out a trembling breath. "Tell me the truth, Alexander," she whispered. "Tell me what you've done." A muscle in his jaw ticked. Then he spoke. "The Sinclair curse can only be broken in 2 ways, he said quietly. Sophia swallowed. "What ways?" Alexander's voice was slow, deliberate. "Either the wife dies," he paused, "or the husband does." Sophia felt the ground crumble beneath her, her chest locked up. Alexander's eyes held hers. "That's why I had to marry you, Sophia. That's why you were chosen." Sophia's stomach twisted. "Because I'm meant to die," she whispered. Alexander didn't deny it. Sophia felt like she was going to be sick. She stared at him, her mind screaming at her to wake up, to run, to fight. But then, liar. The voice wasn't hers. A sharp, cold wind swept through the room. The walls shuddered. The flames snuffed out. And suddenly they weren't alone anymore. The brides. All of them. They stood in a circle around Alexander, their hollow, dead eyes locked onto him. And in front of them, leading them, the ghost bride. The first. The one who had spoken to Sophia before. Her wedding gown billowed as if caught in an unseen storm, her decayed fingers twitching at her sides. She stepped forward, her voice ripping through the silence. "Liar!" Alexander went rigid. Sophia felt something shift. The air grew heavier. The ghost bride raised her hand, and the whole room trembled. The portraits shattered. The bookshelves collapsed. Sophia barely had time to react before the floor beneath her split open. She fell. A scream tore from her throat as she plunged into darkness. And the last thing she saw was Alexander reaching for her. Sophia hit the ground hard. The impact rattled through her bones, but the pain barely registered. She was alive. For now. The air around her was thick, damp, suffocating. The floor beneath her was cold, made of uneven stone. The scent of decay and old blood clung to the walls. She wasn't in the mansion anymore. She was in a crypt. Heart hammering in her chest, she pushed herself up, her hands pressing against the damp floor. The room around her was massive, lined with rows of coffins and rusted iron gates. And then she saw them, the brides, all of them. They stood in a wide circle, their hollow eyes locked onto her. Some had bones visible through rotting flesh. Others had wedding dresses soaked in old dried blood. They were waiting. A cold, sharp wind whispered through the crypt. And then she heard footsteps, slow, measured, coming closer. Sophia's, body locked up. She turned her head, and there he was, Alexander. He stood at the entrance of the crypt, his broad shoulders tense, his blue eyes unreadable. But he wasn't alone. The ghost bride stood beside him. Her decayed lips parted, and, in a voice as old as death itself, she whispered, "It's time." Sophia's stomach dropped. She scrambled to her feet. "Time for what?" The ghost bride lifted a hand, and the crypt walls trembled. The ground cracked beneath her feet, and then a coffin at the center of the room slowly began to open. Sophia's blood ran cold, because the name engraved into the coffin's lid was hers, Sophia Sinclair. Her vision blurred. "No," she whispered. "No, I'm not supposed to be here." The ghost bride tilted her head. "You were always supposed to be here." Sophia's breath hitched. She spun to Alexander. "Tell me this isn't real," she choked out. "Tell me I can still get out of this." Alexander's face was unreadable. "You have a choice." Sophia's pulse roared in her ears. "What choice?" Alexander took a step forward. "The curse must be broken." His gaze locked onto hers. "And the only way to do that—" He slowly reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a dagger. Sophia's entire body froze. The blade gleamed in the dim candlelight. He held it out to her. "You kill me," he said softly. Sophia's chest locked up. "Or—" Alexander turned the dagger in his palm. The blade now pointed toward her. "I kill you," he murmured. Sophia's breath caught. No. No, no, no. The only way to break the curse was for one of them to die. Her hands shook violently. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you bring me here, Alexander?" His blue eyes darkened. "Because I hoped you'd be the one to end this." Sophia stared at him, and suddenly she understood. Alexander didn't want to kill her. He wanted her to kill him, to end his family's curse forever. The brides had all died because none of them had done it. They had refused, and now it was up to her. Her pulse pounded in her skull. The dagger felt heavy in Alexander's hands. If she didn't take it, he would have no choice. She would die, just like the others. Sophia's fingers twitched. The brides watched in silence, waiting. The ghost bride's voice whispered through the crypt, "Choose, Sophia." Sophia's fingers curled into fists. Her heart screamed. And then she made her choice. Sophia's hand trembled as she reached for the dagger. The cold metal pressed against her palm, heavy with the weight of an impossible decision. Kill Alexander, or die herself. She looked up at him. His blue eyes held hers, steady, unblinking. There was no fear in them, no hesitation. He wanted her to do it. Sophia's chest tightened. She could end this right here, right now. She could break the curse, but could she kill him? Alexander, the man who had deceived her, trapped her, nearly condemned her to death. And yet, somewhere along the way, he had also tried to save her. His hand closed over hers, guiding the dagger closer to his heart. "Sophia," he murmured, "you have to do this." Her breath hitched. His fingers tightened around hers. "It's the only way." The brides watched in silence, their hollow eyes reflecting the candlelight. The ghost bride stood at the head of the circle, her decayed lips curling into something almost gentle. "End it," she whispered. Sophia's pulse pounded. Her fingers curled tighter around the dagger's hilt. Her vision blurred. Then she made her choice. With a sharp inhale, she turned the blade and plunged it into her own chest. A collective gasp echoed through the crypt. The brides staggered back. The ghost bride's eyes widened. Even Alexander, who had prepared for his own death, looked shocked. "Sophia!" He lunged forward, catching her before she could collapse. She sucked in a shaky breath. the pain searing through her. But she smiled, because she understood something now, something none of them had before. The curse was never about who died, it was about who chose. No Sinclair bride had ever been given a real choice. They had all been sacrificed, whether by Alexander's ancestors or by the curse itself. But this time, Sophia chose. She broke the cycle. The crypt shuddered. The walls cracked. A sudden blinding light exploded from her wound, engulfing the entire room. And in the brilliance of that light, the brides began to vanish. One by one, their hollow forms dissolved into golden mist, their twisted, broken bodies finally freed. The ghost bride was the last to go. She stepped forward, her decayed hand brushing Sophia's cheek. "Well done," she whispered. And then, she was gone. The crypt began to collapse. Alexander held Sophia against him, his breathing ragged. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Sophia, please." Her vision faded. Her body felt light. And then, darkness. She awoke to sunlight, warm, golden. Sophia gasped, her eyes flying open. She was in a bedroom, a beautiful one with floor-to-ceiling windows and soft white sheets. The Sinclair mansion, but different. The air felt lighter. The suffocating weight that had loomed over it before was gone. She pressed a hand to her chest, where the dagger had pierced her, but there was no wound, just smooth, unbroken skin. The curse was gone. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor made her turn her head. Alexander sat beside her, staring at her like he still couldn't believe she was real. "You're awake," he breathed. Sophia swallowed. "I thought I was dead." "You almost were," he said softly. His hands trembled as he reached for hers. "You saved me," he whispered. Sophia shook her head. "I saved us both." Silence stretched between them. Then Alexander exhaled a shaky laugh. "You're a terrible wife, you know. Wedding night and you tried to die on me." Sophia let out a weak laugh. "Yeah, well, you were planning to kill me first." Alexander winced. "Fair point." Sophia looked at him. "So, what happens now?" Alexander's grip on her hand tightened. "We live," he said simply. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, the Sinclair family was free.